Khadijat Dokunmu-Adegbite, the Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Basic and Secondary Education, Lagos State, our esteemed panelists, colleagues from the Institute for Work and Family Integration, and most importantly, the parents and educators joining us from across the globe. Good morning. On behalf of the board and the entire team at the Institute for Work and Family Integration, I'm honored to welcome you to this vital conversation as we commemorate the International Day of Education. Education is the bedrock of any thriving society, but today we are here to look beyond the classroom and into the very heart of the home. At the Institute for Work and Family Integration, our mission is built on a singular, powerful premise that the workplace and the family are not two competing words, but two halves of a whole. One of our core advocacies is the active and intentional involvement of parents in their children's education. We believe that while schools provide the curriculum, parents provide the character. Research consistently shows, and our work at IWFI confirms, that when parents are engaged, children don't just perform better academically, they develop the emotional resilience and social competence necessary to navigate life. To bridge the gap between the classroom and the living room, we established the Executive Teachers Program in Integral Student Education, ETP-ISC. This initiative is specifically designed to equip teachers. Fostering this partnership, the ETP-ISC ensures we are providing a truly holistic and personalized education to every child, one that addresses their intellectual, emotional, and ethical growth in unison. However, for a parent to be truly present, there must be a healthy integration of their professional and personal lives. A parent who is drowning in work-related stress or trapped in a toxic domestic environment cannot effectively anchor a child's educational journey. This brings us to our theme for today, the hidden cost of toxicity, protecting children's future in challenging family dynamics. We often discuss the cost of education in terms of tuition and books, but there is a more profound cost, the psychological and developmental price children pay when they are raised in environments defined by toxicity, conflict, or neglect. When family dynamics are fractured, a child's ability to learn is the first casualty. A child cannot focus on algebra if they are worried about the safety or stability of their home. By addressing these hidden costs, we are not just solving a family problem, we are safeguarding the future of our workforce and our nation. We are here today to discuss how we can build protective shields around our children, even when the dynamics are difficult. We have assembled an incredible panel of experts, psychologists, legal practitioners, educators, and business advisors to help us unpack these complexities. I urge you all to listen, not just as professionals, but as stakeholders in the next generation. Let us use this webinar to move from awareness to action, ensuring that every home becomes a primary place of learning, love, and safety. Once again, welcome. I look forward to a most insightful section.
Thank you very much, Mr. Charles Aibuna, Executive Secretary, Institute for Work and Family Integration. Okay, so without much ado, we would kick off now that we have been welcomed by the Executive Secretary. I want to introduce to us our moderator for today, Ms. Ejiro Odubanjo, who is a commercially astute HR executive, an advisor with over 15 years of experience leading HR and consulting teams across sectors to deliver measurable impacts, including enhanced employee engagement, top talent retention, revenue growth, and award-winning people systems. She has led HR teams to earn multiple accolades, including 3 consecutive years Hofstede Culture Awards for Diversity and Inclusion and the NECA Employer Excellence Award for Banking and Financial Services. As Chief Human Resources Officer at a bank and a trusted advisor to founders and CEOs, she brings deep expertise at the intersection of business, strategy, technology, and people. Outside of work, she leads women and teen-focused outreach initiatives under a faith-based platform and is active as a speaker, researcher, writer, and advisor on technology, AI, digital transformation, and adoption, design thinking, products, operations, and people strategy. She helps leaders translate strategy into execution through people, culture, and systems. Ladies and gentlemen, please let's welcome Mrs. Ejiro Ogubanjo.
Thank you very much, and good morning, everyone. Good morning. Welcome to this special webinar commemorating the International Day of Education. Let me just confirm if I'm audible. Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
All right, great. A big thank you to the Institute for Family and Work and Family Integration for this very thoughtful session, and not just the session itself, but even the caliber of the panelists that have been put in place to discuss this very important topic. As the Executive Secretary spoke to when he was giving his opening address, education does not happen in isolation. It's shaped by the environment children grow up in, it's shaped by the relationship they experience. It's also shaped by the emotional safety that they either enjoy or they are denied. And so today, we are shining a light on a topic that isn't very much spoken about, but it needs to be addressed head on: the hidden cost of toxicity within family dynamics and what it means for a child's learning, well-being, and long-term future. We have an outstanding list of panelists to speak to this topic today, but I would go into that very quickly as we move on with the rest of the session. It is my honor and a great privilege to be able to moderate this conversation and help us understand how toxic environments show up in our children's behaviors, in their performance, and most importantly, what can be done to protect them as we leave today's session. But before we get into the panel conversations, we have a very distinguished speaker in our midst who is here to set the tone for today's conversation. And we're privileged to begin with this keynote address from a leader who sits at the intersection of education policy, of public service leadership, and of course, human capital development. Whilst I'm reading through her profile, I'd kindly ask for support from the Secretariat to please upload her slides so that she's ready to speak to them immediately we get into the session. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished panelists and individuals on this call this morning, I would read the profile of Mrs. Abisola Khadijat Dokunmu-Adegbite, our keynote speaker for today. Mrs. Abisola Khadijat Dokunmu-Adegbite is the Permanent Secretary at the Ministry of Basic and Secondary Education, Lagos State. Can I see the virtual claps? Can I see the virtual hands going up as I read this profile? Can I see the comments and the reactions in the chat showing that we're excited to learn from this distinguished professional this morning? Awesome, I can see it coming in. Mrs. Abisola is a distinguished administrator and seasoned human resource professional with over 26 years of meritorious service in the Lagos State Public Service. She commenced her civil service career in 1999 as an administrative officer and has steadily risen through the ranks to her current appointment as the Permanent Secretary. The Institute for Work and Family Life does not do things in half measures. If they're putting this session together, you can be rest assured that they have brought the best of the best. She holds a Bachelor of Arts degree in English Education from Lagos State University, a Master's degree in Public and International Affairs from the University of Lagos, and a Master's degree in International Human Resource Management from Rome Business School. I expect to see those claps still coming in. Mrs. Dokunmu-Adegbite is a fellow of several reputable professional bodies, including NIM, the Association for Human Resource Practitioners of Nigeria, the Institute of Strategic Management of Nigeria, and the Corporate Governance Practitioners Association of Nigeria. She's also a member of the CIPM, the Institute of Directors, and other notable institutions. In demonstration of her leadership capacity, she served as the president of Set 41 of the prestigious Policy, Strategy, and Leadership course at the National Institute for Policy and Strategic Studies, NIPSS, Kuru. I'm taking the time to speak details to her profile because I want everyone settled in when she is speaking. Other amazing antecedents that she has recorded is also being the executive member for the review of the Lagos State Public Service Rules in 2015, contributing her extensive admin and HR expertise to its reform process. Beyond the public service, she served as a keynote speaker for various functions, including those by international organizations such as UNICEF, where she has shared valuable insights on education reform in Lagos State, public service leadership, and human capital development. And today, she's not just wearing her professional hat. She's bringing the best of the skill set that she has and bringing and coming in her capacity as a happily married woman who is blessed with children. With another extensive round of applause, let's put our hands together for Mrs. Abisola Khadijat Dokunmu-Adegbite, who will take us for the next 25 minutes on her keynote address. And then we will go into some questions and answers in the panel session. Over to you, madam. Good morning, and thank you for being here.
Good morning, Ejiro, if you'll permit me to call you that. And thank you for that beautiful introduction. I'd like to say good morning to everyone on the call. My special and warm regards to Otumba Bayo Adeoye and everybody who's put this together. I'd also like to thank every panelist who is going to be on this webinar. Welcome everybody to this webinar. And I say thank you for making time out to join on a Saturday morning. It tells us how important this is to us and what it means, what our children mean to us. So today is International Day for Education. I congratulate all of us, educators, all administrators of education, and every that is connected to education, which would include the parents. When I saw the topic, it kind of resonated with a lot of things on my mind. In 25 minutes, I'll quickly try to do a bit of justice to what I have, what I can speak to. However, before we proceed, one of the things I always say when I have the opportunity is, I'm not teaching you anything new. Honestly, I will not be. However, I'm going to be teaching you or going along with you to explain how to use what you already know. So we're all in this together and we need for our children. Thank you so much. So from the topic already, which has been mentioned about twice, breaking cycles, how toxic relationships in marriage impact children's education. And the main theme, which is the focus, is the hidden cost of toxicity, protecting children in challenging family dynamics. We honestly cannot ignore this. We can't. It's the reality of today. It's the reality of the present world, not only in Lagos, not only in Africa, but I think worldwide. And it is important that we look at this aspect and begin to address it as individuals, as a community, as a state, and as a nation, and obviously as an organization. What do we hope to achieve with this? I've got some objectives already, which I think, using the next slide, will point out to what. But basically, what we explore today is how toxic marital relationships affect children's emotional well-being and education. Secondly, we aim to examine the impact of family dynamics on learning, behavior, and school engagement. And the third one will be to provide practical strategies for educators, parents, and caregivers to support affected children. Now, having said that, there are 3 categories that we've already mentioned. And then we go on to say that, look, children's learning and academic performance are strongly influenced by the stability of their home. And this we can find in introduction. So if I have somebody who can move on to the next slide, it will be easier. And I don't want to read the slides, but I want us to understand that, as earlier said, I think that was by the executive secretary, education is not just limited to the classroom, but it also resonates at the homes. And whatever we do at the home translates to how best our children perform in the school. The emotions, it would affect their behavior, it would affect their ability to learn, and addressing these challenges is essential so that we can protect our children's education and secure their future. Now, to bust your bubble a bit, so my older brother didn't want a bit of distraction, help me lock the door so you have all my attention. That's just an example of what family can do. So he sees and he knows I need to be 100% concentrating, and then he's done that for me. So those little things we do at the homes also would affect our children when they get to their schools. So beyond the introduction, we need to understand what toxic relationships are. And what are toxic relationships? These are relationships that often are characterized by persistent conflict, emotional neglect or manipulation, and lack of respect and ineffective communication. And if we look at our homes, honestly, some of these things we do not do intentionally, but they come around. And the effect of these relationships are the following: persistent conflict and hostility, and manipulation, lack of respect and communication, and unresolved stress within the home. The honest truth, if as a woman, maybe a parent, you are so stressed, there is no way you will be able to understand what the children are going to. Even as a man, there's persistent conflict. All you want to do is have some peace. So you either stay out of the house often and the children don't have access to you, or you come in and you are frowning and you are hostile to everyone. However, we need to understand that all these things do not just impact us, but would impact our children. And in doing that, it affects everything we do. So we must guard against these things. Thank you so very much for the prompt move. So let's ask ourselves, how does toxicity affect children? It causes them emotional distress and anxiety. They're unhappy, they're stressed, they're pressured, and they're just anxious about, what's going to happen when I get home again? Concentration and learning difficulties. I read something yesterday while I was preparing for this and says, look, if a child is not settled at home, you're not going to get the child in school. That's the truth, because his attention and concentration, or she, would be divided. And then what happens? That it affects their behaviors. What they see at home is what they reflect on and what they deliver in the school. You find out that somebody who is always anxious or unhappy will tend to, go back in shells or become aggressive. Moreover, we've been through this. We've heard people that have been through it, and we know already it will cause low self-esteem and very low motivation. When we want the best from our children, we want them high esteem, even if it's something that seems unattainable. With their confidence, somebody else can do it, then absolutely I can do it. And they're motivated to want to do better. And for us to be careful when our children are around and what we do in the homes. And when we look at these things, we know that it impacts, it would definitely impact their education. And it is at this stage we must understand as parents, as caregivers, as guardians. I will go into that in a bit. I hope I'm not moving too fast. I'm trying to ensure that I stay within the limit.
Oh, yes,
And
sure.
I hope I do have
right on schedule.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Impact of this on our children cannot be ignored. And you can sense, and you can see, and you can feel it in 3D or in 5D, because you will see it on the children. Most certainly, there will be a decline in academic performance. It's only in exceptional cases that a child is able to churn this or turn this around and say, look, I'm not going to let this affect me, and such a child becomes a high flyer. But the honest truth is, normally it will cause a decline in academic performance. It would affect school attendance, most certainly. The mom is probably saying, no, you take them. The dad is probably saying, no, you take them. And you keep asking, oh, no, it's not my duty, it's your duty. Some things like that, or something happens, or you can't go to school today, you have to stay home. And the child also will have difficulty engaging with peers and teachers. A child that is not in the right frame of mind will not concentrate fully, will not be able to would be like a recluse in the school, or just want to keep to his or herself, would be agitated, would be angry at times, would be sad at some times. Overall, it will cause an increase in the risk of dropouts. So when I say this, I think we need to understand how bad such a situation would affect our children. It leads to depression. It leads to depression, and most certainly suicide. And we have to be careful what we do so that we do not push our children to depression or into suicide. However, at this stage, before I go on to the next slide, I'd just like to mention something. I don't know if children on this call, but as parents, as guardians, as caregivers, I'd like us to speak to our children after this. There's so many of them that currently have thoughts of suicide in their minds. And again, based on something I had read, I think about 2 days ago, I think we need to speak to our children. They should never, ever, ever, and this applies to us as parents, to think of suicide. They should never. It doesn't affect just them. Number one, they didn't give themselves life, or whoever, so you can't take the life that you didn't give you. Number two, it affects not just the person that's committed the suicide. It affects everybody relating or around such a person. If, for instance, the person is maybe a 23-year-old, and next time somebody has a birthday and shares the same date, family will continue to remember that. So please, this is one I think we should look at beyond just this webinar, and speak to our parents, understand our children, look at them, look out for them, observe certain situations, observe certain changes in them, and be able to address issues quickly before they escalate. I'll go on quickly to address how toxicity affects children. But I think I'd already mentioned that. So I'll go of parents and guardians and caregivers. And I had mentioned before. So as we're here, you will fall into one of these categories. Parents, it's either you're biological or adoptive adults legally responsible for a child's upbringing and welfare. Guardians, individuals legally appointed by whoever, the state, the law, to care for a child when parents are absent or unable to do so. And caregivers, these are adults who provide daily care, emotional support to a child, including relatives and trusted adults. And under this, we'll have the teachers, we'll have the guidance counselors, we'll have the psychologists as well. As an adult, you fall into one of these categories most certainly. And what do our roles do? Our roles are very important. Our roles as parents, as guardians, as caregivers are very important. And we must never joke with them. because I keep emphasizing these determine how our children turn out. Our roles create emotional safe home environments. Separate marital conflicts for parenting responsibilities, please. We must learn to do that. We have our responsibilities and obligations to our younger ones, to our children, to our wards. Please, let's learn to separate marital conflicts from parental responsibilities. Do not tie them together. Do not children because you have some marital conflict. Necessary, kindly seek counseling and family support services. No one is an island. You can't do it alone. And let me tell you here today, no one is perfect. No one has everything under control. That is the truth. So when you do need to seek counseling and family support services, please do. There are several options available. Maintain open communication with children. And I can tell you for free, I had to learn. When you tell them to do something, I'm sure most of you know, they'll say, why? We didn't dare ask why in our time. They will ask you why. And for a while, I didn't understand. When you ask me why, I said, why are you asking me that? Do this. But I realized that it has to be a two-way communication. And children speak to you better. Know that you are able to explain to them. Sometimes, by the time you are talking to them and communicating with them, you find out that they have the superior argument. Never shy away and never walk away from listening to them. Have conversations with, based on all this that I have said, because I had said counseling and family support services and everything, and looking at it from of the state government, which I'm coming from as a permanent secretary, Ministry of Basic and Secondary Education. And at this point in time, I'd like to recognize the presence of the permanent secretary, Tutor General Permanent Secretary, Education District 1, Lagos State, Dr. Olu. She's on the call as well. Thank you so much, ma'am, for being here. There's several policies of Lagos State, regarding education. And we do not joke with education in the state. And I must also tell you, looking at this, I don't know yet, but I think I have nothing less than about 3 to 35 educators in Lagos State on this call as well. I'm very sure of that. And this buttresses how important it is to us when matters like this come up, because we have even spoken about it. The government has the free program, and this is to ease everything. Quality education for all, and we also have a slogan that says, leave no child behind. So we that we educate every child. That's the policy of free education in Lagos State. And I can assure you, Mr. Governor does not joke with this. It is dear to our hearts. And can I also tell you, because from what you have said, it is free, completely free, from primary to junior secondary schools. And here as well, I don't know if it's going to come later, but let me mention to you that the state government pays the WAEC fees of every SS3 student in our public secondary schools in Lagos State. We're doing this with the parents to show that government is not just leaving everything to them. However, we are asking that we can't do it alone. And when you look at my second point here, we also have the Lagos State Safeguarding and Child Protection Policy. This is a mandatory framework for all child-centered institutions to protect children from abuse, neglect, and exploitation. In the Ministry of Education, we have a department that is focused on that, guidance and counseling and managing the emotional children. And we have teachers and guidance and counselors in our schools. We do not have enough. We have just written to get an approval to recruit specialized guidance counselors in all our public secondary schools in Lagos State. And I know we will get an approval because we understand the import. importance and the expectations of all. We also have a child protection policy, which requires all schools and institutions to adopt and implement safeguarding measures. And I will tell you something again today. I was fortunate yesterday to be at a meeting with Mr. Governor that also had my Honorable Commissioner, Mr. Jamiu Tolani Adibalogun, attendance, as well as the Director General of Office of Education Assurance, Lagos State. And we also had heads and management of some private schools in Lagos State, as well as the Association of Private Schools in Lagos State. One of the things that came up was safeguarding our children in schools. We have an initiative already on the safe school, but we're not stopping at that. And one thing came up there that, okay, you need to engage parents and let them understand more that what they do affects the children. And I just smiled because I knew this webinar was coming up this morning. So it looks like the Institute is in tune and in tandem with realities of today as society and expectations. And I must commend the Institute for this. Because of that, I'm giving them a round of applause because this is timely and this is apt. When we talk about this, we also now have a resource allocation. And this takes me to the next slide. And when we say that, having said all these initiatives that the state government has, when you talk about the resource allocation, policy on education, is linked to the Ministry of Basic and Secondary Education guidelines, which mandates guidance and counseling services in schools, assessment, and placement for special needs. We do not joke with this. And this is not just done by the ministry. It is also done in collaboration with the 6 education districts in Lagos State. So we're not centralized. We haven't just centralized. We have also disaggregated to be able to reach every school and everywhere. I've also trained safeguarding officers. Over 10,000 of them have been trained across schools and institutions to prevent abuse and respond effectively. And this also brings you to the fact that the Lagos State, government completely zero tolerance for any form of abuse in schools. As a state, we don't take it at all. We have zero tolerance for sexual abuse, for domestic violence in our schools, zero tolerance. And we work in conjunction with the DSVA, that is Lagos State Office of Domestic Violence. We have zero tolerance for it completely. And that is why the government takes it seriously and with it and allocates resources. Yes, there's a lot of competition for the resources. However, with the little that we get and with God's grace, a lot more, we would be able to do a lot more. And this brings me to the Lagos State cross-section collaboration. I had mentioned that. So if I can have the next slide. The ministry doesn't do this alone. The Lagos State government works together. Every MDA, if you look at what I have listed here, you will find, I just mentioned Domestic Violence Agency. So you can see that it is there. We work with ministry when we need to prosecute, especially all the matters affecting the welfare, well-being, molestation, and abuse cases regarding children. We work in collaboration with justice. Oh, we're so in tune with Ministry of Youth and Social Development. We escalate, any issues, and they escalate to us any matter relating to the management of cases involving child rape, abuse, neglect in schools. We work together. Ministry of Health is always there for us. I know there's some things going around in several schools now, primary, junior, senior secondary schools, on the rubella vaccine. in all our schools. We work with security agencies. We have what we call the Safe School platform, and this has all security agencies. On late Saturday, on Thursday, we got a report from LSNC on the activities in all our public schools for year 2025, fully documented. And we also got another report on their interaction with private schools in 2025. And they're also asking us to grant approval so they can continue in 2026. So you see there's a continuation. It's just not a one-off thing. We engage in community stakeholders interaction. Sometime last year, we collaborated with All Students Association, doing that this year with parents and communities to discuss the welfare and well-being of our students. So this year, looking at having as many parents, there will be some parents platforms. So it will probably be the PTA platforms, and we're also going to be engaging with communities, the local government chairmen, the local government education secretaries, the OBAs, and everyone. We would actually even be going to talk with religious leaders, because we understand now that we need to address this, not just in the schools, but as a community and as a society. We also work hand in hand with Domestic and Sexual Violence Agency regarding the safeguarding, of the rights of a child. We have workshops coming up, and they have also held several workshops, in conjunction with us and several MDAs. Again, we got a letter from them about 2 days ago, wanting to sit with us to understand how we move in 2026 and expand our horizon. I'd also like to reiterate here that there's an emergency response toll-free, 24-hour toll-free line. It is 08000333 and again 333. It is available 24/7 to report any case of abuse or you need to seek help. I'll take it again. 000-333. It is available for reporting abuse or seeking help. Can we move on to the next slide, please? I'd like us to look at what is next there. And this is the fact that we monitor, evaluate data compliance or safety standards at the state government schools. We do that. The state government, through the Safe School Lagos initiative, in collaboration with Ministry of Basic and Secondary Education and the Lagos State Safety Commission, enforces safety standards as part of school approvals and compliance, usually coordinated by the Office of Education Quality Assurance. We want our children to be, we would like our schools to be inclusive. So it's not just about a certain category of students, it's about all children. So we want our children to be safe. We also do periodic monitoring of the implementation of child protection policies to measure the impact and gaps across schools within the state. This is carried out by the ministry's, again, Office of Education Quality Assurance. And I know that another department, Guidance and Counseling Department of the ministry, also does. They also do this. And I know they do a good job. So now this takes me to how we identify what we need to do as educators and schools, because I know I have lots of educators on this call, and also proprietors, proprietresses, headmasters and mistresses, lead teachers, head teachers, and several people, instructors, that are members of the education family. And what we need from you, please, is to early identify warning signs of distress. I had mentioned it. A child that normally is bubbly suddenly becomes, please find out what's going on so that we can nip it in the bud. Provide guidance and counseling support. This is very essential. All a child wants is to be heard. All a child wants is to be listened to. It is important that each school provides a guidance and counseling, service provider. Please, it is very essential. Promote inclusive and safe learning spaces. I can't overemphasize this enough. From my profile, you had heard that I have a degree in education, a first degree, but my life has been in HR. But I've found in the education sector in close to a year now, and I understand really what goes on in the education sector. And I'm telling you that it's not just about the students, it's not just about the able-bodied children, but also about our special needs children. Please provide inclusive environments for them. And this is why, as a state, we have what we call the alternative school for girls, and we hope to have more. This is giving a second chance. So please go back to that slide. A second chance to some of our girls who have missed it along the way. And it is important for all of us as adults on this call to ensure that we strengthen home and school collaboration. It's not enough for parents to pay fees, for those that school pay fees and leave the children to the teachers or to the educators. No, it's not enough for parents, which is one of the problems we have in the public schools. When you call a meeting in the public schools, the parents don't attend. But we're going to try to bridge that gap now, because we want to do this. You need to bridge the gap between the home and the school. Collaboration is very, very essential. Thank you. Now we can move to the next slide. Thank you very much. So we have seen from what I have said that it is the collaborative responsibility, collective responsibility, and collaboration is needed between families, schools, and communities. We have to work together. No one can do it alone. Families cannot do it alone. The schools cannot do it alone. Communities cannot do it alone. And most certainly the government cannot do it alone. So it is a circle, a cycle. It is both a circle of all of us, and it is a cycle because it's going to keep moving. And at this, I must say that early intervention prevents long-term damage. So if we're able to look at all the things I had mentioned earlier and be able to identify quickly where we need to address, then we will be able to prevent long-term damage. These should prioritize child well-being alongside academic outcomes. Our policies are not just regarding academics, and that's why certain NGOs, not all NGOs, because we're now streamlining our activities with NGOs. It's not MD NGO that writes to us that we now want to collaborate with. We're looking at the capabilities of these NGOs. We're looking at their structures. We're looking at their faculties. If you want to come and talk to our children, for instance, about leadership, we're looking at your faculty, your capabilities. We're also looking at those true to what they have come to say they will do. But our policies prioritize children well-being alongside academic outcomes. And we do not joke with this. And that is why the focus and maybe the final say, because of what we're working at, is breaking the cycle. I had already mentioned it earlier. It's a cycle and it's a circle. It's going to keep revolving if we do not address it. So we must address it to protect our children's futures. We have to. We have to look at, the family life, which is not just, but for the future as well. And what we set out to do today would certainly affect their future. Let's understand that. Secondly, we should know that healthy relationships support better learning outcomes. I'm not saying there will not be conflicts at the home, but please let us try and resolve them as quickly as possible, as amicably as possible, even if there are separations. They don't have to be hostile. Even if there will be separations, not because of just us, but because of our children. Because like I said, healthy relationships support better learning. And finally, every child deserves stability, safety, and opportunity. Every child, not some children. Every child deserves stability, safety, and opportunity. So on this note, I'm going to give a call to action, a collective, not for one person, not for just the institute, not for one organization, not for one community, not just for the state government, not just for the nation, but a call to action that we must all, as individuals, as parents, as guardians, as caregivers, as family, as communities, as leaders, as state, as government, as a nation, everyone, please let's commit to protecting our children from the hidden cost, which I have mentioned, of toxic family dynamics. Together, we can break the harmful cycles and secure bright educational futures. Thank you very much for ladies and gentlemen, and for your attention. I hope to some extent I've been able to do justice to the topic, and I hope we have learned one or two things, and I hope we have your commitment, because this must go around the state and definitely impact the students studying in Lagos State and beyond Lagos State. Thank you very much to the Institute, ladies and gentlemen, and God bless you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, madam. Thank you so much. This deserves, I mean, if we're physically present, that deserved a standing round of applause. But because we're virtually connected, I'd like to kindly ask for the virtual claps, the virtual hearts, and the virtual reactions to come in. And not just through the reactions tab, but even in the comments section. This was powerful, and you kept right to time with just about 5 minutes to spare. I'm going to steal that back from the Q&A parts, but thank you so much, Madam PS. Thank you. It was such an insightful session. Can we please put our hands together again once more for the PS? And I mean, there were a lot of things, too many nuggets in this. I think you just broke the ice by commencing the session with a practical reality that the average parent faces. When you spoke about having to shut your door and literally probably have someone man that door so you could have focus for this session. And so no matter how much we think that work and life is separate, we would always find these gray areas where they sort of bleed into each other. Thank you so much, ma.
Thank you very much, Ejiro.
All right.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can now.
Okay, thank you so very much, Ejiro. And I do appreciate that. I was just smiling when he came to shut the door, and like you said, you can't separate work from home, you can't separate school from home. That's the truth. That's the truth. Yeah.
Very, very, very deep, man. So many other nuggets shared. When you spoke about emotional distress, when you reminded both parents and children to avoid suicide, like don't even think about that as an option, because beyond you, there's a whole community of people who will be impacted by that decision. Thank you so much, Ma. When you give a charge to say separate marital conflict from child raising. So yes, you may be going through a separation or this or that, but don't let that bleed into what's happening with the children. Thank you, Ma. And then of course the Lagos State charge, leave no child behind, which we then saw as you started to speak to all the things that Lagos State government is doing with free education, with paying for WAEC, for SS3 students, with getting guardians, counselors into schools, with training over 10,000 safeguarding officers. I mean, we saw the leave no child in action. No child behind in action. We did see that when you were speaking. Thank you, Ma.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
All right. So I'd asked that if we have questions, we should drop them in the chat. And a number of questions came in while you were speaking and at the end of the session. I think the first one, if we have a member of your team here, that would probably be best for that person to do, is to drop the phone number for the hotline that you shared, the 24/7 toll-free number.
Okay.
So if you have any member of your team who can please drop that while I now go to the next question. And this question is from John Onibo. But before I do that, I would just like to read a few comments. You have a lot of very impacted people in the comments. I can see well done and thank you, my PS. I can see Rita saying excellent speech. Thank you a lot, ma'am. I can see Adetola saying highly thought-provoking, powerful and insightful. Welcome, ma. I can see Ibironke saying thank you for the well-delivered lecture. Some people are commenting from their phones, so I won't be able to read their comments. Olamileko says, well done. I see Baba Wumi saying again, well done. Amusa says, our erudite PS. I agree, but I mean, please don't hug her only now. We are now all in her fan club, right? So please extend some of that love to us too. Says our erudite PS, thank you for the insightful presentation and the reminders to all stakeholders. Thank you very much, ma'am. Fumulayo says, beautiful delivery, same from Lucy. So I will go to the question now, and the question is from John Onibon. And John says, how should an educator resolve an issue with a child whose response in the class is timid and non-responsive? And as an educator, I have tried to talk with the child. I've used a cheerful approach. I've used simple and lowly approach. I've used gifts approach. Thank you, John. You've tried a number of things, etc. But the child did not open up to tell what is going on his or her mind.
Thank you very much, Charles. Got the name, yeah, Charles? So
John Onibo.
John Onibo. So just like Ejiro said, thank you for having used all those avenues. First thing I'd like you to know is, which is one thing I always say, and I'm not the typical, facilitator. I say that, is that if you look at your fingers, they're certainly not equal. So that's the angle I come from first. The angle I come from first. So because they're not equal, you're things out of all the children. So understand that. Some are fast, slow, some are outspoken, some are timid. I don't know how long you've been with that child for. Has the child always been like that, or did the child change? So it might be difficult to answer that question if the child has always been like that, the child's nature. I'm talking about, okay, maybe if a child is in SS and has always been like that since SS1, then probably that's the child's nature. You can't force something else on such a child. You can just manage. Now, if it's not affecting the academics, then understand. However, if it was a change over time, that means something happened. If you have tried as an educator, excuse me, there are other ways. How about you let another educator step in? How about you let another student step in? And from whatever response you get from them, you know the next line of action. It's sometimes we expect that when we talk to them, they should be able to open up. Sometimes they're not ready to. But like I said, the child has always been like that, maybe that's the child's nature. If the child changed over, then you might need to do one of those two things then before you move to the next thing.
Wow.
I hope I've been able to answer you.
Well, I'll trust that John will put a comment. Please drop a comment in the chat box if this has addressed your question. But it does bring to consideration that conversation around nature versus nurture.
Sure.
And you taking it back to the personality of the child, and when we should recognize that this may just be a child's personality as against trying to benchmark them against other children. Thank you so much for that very insightful feedback, Ma. So we have another question, this time from Amusa Wahab, and he says, is there any means or any way by means of legislative legal framework to compel minimal parental support for every school-age child, protect learners from educational neglect, and strengthen collaboration between families, schools, and government? The Lagos State government invests heavily in free education, and this will improve learning outcomes and long-term human capital development in Lagos State. This is such a profound question, because when you shared all the amazing things Lagos is doing, I'm like, why are parents not all over these opportunities? So please go ahead, Ma.
Thank you very much for that. Yes, we do have some, but you see, it's just like every other aspect of the society. I think humans just generally like, how do you call it, enforcement rather than voluntary compliance. And I had mentioned it too. The rule, for instance, is leave no child behind. The policy is all children of school must go to school. You'll still find some parents that won't. I think as a state, we will get to a stage now where we need to begin to enforce these are policies. But before we do that, we would engage also, in stakeholders meetings, a bit more sensitized. But I do like that. And I like I said, I have several of my members of my team, and I hope somebody has taken that back for me, because from here, we're definitely going to be going back home to talk about these things. Yes, there is. And I agree with you wholeheartedly that you can't just leave it. Parents must be responsible to some extent for the education of their children, and especially in a situation where you find a government that offers it to you on a platter of gold free. So I've noted that. Thank you. And in due course, having done something, I'm sure we'll be able to get back to you. Thank you very much for that.
Thank you very much, Madam PS. I have one comment and one question, but because we have just one, actually, I thought we had a minute left, but we don't. But I think this question is very important, so we'll take that. For the other comments, don't worry, your concerns will be addressed during the rest of the session. So I have this question from Joshua Onwachuku, and it says, with regards to the free education policy in the states, how free is the
reading
education?
it, and I was just reading it, and I was going to answer that.
Excellent.
And Ejiro, sorry, I'm reading it. Free education in Lagos State is free to everybody. When free it is, I do not understand what you mean by that.
Amazing.
Because free education is free education. If we even have to pay WAEC fees, and I know how much it is, I don't want to reel out the amount, then it is free education. And I'm looking for it that is doing what Lagos State is doing. It is free education. However, if a child gets a uniform, for instance, and then he gets tattered and torn from playing football or from playing rough, is government expected to continue to replace? What will be your own commitment and contribution as a parent?
Absolutely.
Free education in Lagos State in all its entirety and totality. Secondly, you see for all residents or only children. When I was talking, I said, leave no child behind. Free education in Lagos State from past administrations and under the leadership of Governor Mr. Babajide Olushola Sanwo-Olu is free.
Wow.
Free education.
Thank you.
Our responsibility as a resident of the state that works in the state, generates money in the state, is to pay your taxes. Free education is free. Your obligation as an adult that works and generates money demands that you pay your taxes, even in all state federal level. I hope I've been able to answer you.
Yes,
Joshua,
you have.
Mr. Joshua, something. I hope
Well,
so.
I'm sure we'll put a comment in the chat, but I want to believe, that your answer was very, very clear with that. So please, let's also play our part. As she has said, we do have our obligations as well. But regardless of those obligations, we are leaving no child behind. And with that, I say thank you once again, Madam PS, for your leadership and for grounding this conversation in policy, with insights, with the responsibility. When you spoke with so much passion. It's clear that this is not just because you sit in a position. It is very dear to your heart, and leaving us with hope for the children of Lagos State and beyond. Because as you consult and advise all these other institutions, like was mentioned in your profile, I believe the learnings from what's working here will start to translate in other aspects of our society. So thank you once more, Ma, for your time. Let's do that virtual applause, and the physical ones have your videos on. Thank you, Madam PS. And so with that, we move to the second segment. If you still have questions for the PS, please drop them in the comments. If she's still around, we can still redirect a few to her when we go to the Q&A for the panelist session. But